Pooya, why should people listen to this episode of Pod Friends featuring you?
Oh, people should listen to this episode because we go through the roller coaster, the eras, the ups, the downs, the middles of me and my entire journey being with RHAP. And they get to learn a little bit about how 2020, monumental year for both of us when it comes to our career in RHAP. And they'll get to learn all about that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pod Friends. My name is Matt Scott, and I'm thrilled, excited for what this season of Pod Friends has in store. And I'm thrilled to be back with you for yet another episode of the show where we get to know the people within this RHAP community. That includes podcasters, that includes players from some of the shows we love. And this week, I'm thrilled to talk with, as you saw in the title of the episode, the premier expert when it comes to coverage of the hit series The Traitors, the one, the only Pooya. And I'm so thrilled to get into this conversation. One thing I want to recommend before we dive into it, because this will be a pretty short intro, is just to say, if you want to hear more from Pooya about his backstory, how he grew up, everything, there's an incredible, 2-hour long interview that Taryn Armstrong did with Pooya on the Taryn Show about 7 years ago. So go to robhaswebsite.com, search for Taryn Show, Pooya, find that episode again, almost exactly 7 years ago, or almost exactly 7 years ago. I almost can't believe it. But they talk so much about his backstory. In this one, we talk about Pooya, the podcaster, Pooya, over these last 7 years, Pooya, since joining the community through So You Think You Could Podcast, Pooya's eras, so to speak, to borrow from Taylor Swift. And so one thing I love is that we just have so much in common. We talk a lot about imposter syndrome, but we also talk about getting cozy in the community and the different ways that we each have gone about that and bring people together, and just being creators. The creator's journey is a huge piece of what we talk about. So we nerd out about that a bit. And it's so fun because I feel like Pooya does an excellent job as a storyteller, bringing us through where he is now. And he talks through different eras that, as a podcaster on RHAP since 2020, over almost the last 5 years, I almost can't believe that. I've seen him, I've witnessed him, I've always, and we talk about this, but I've seen how amazing he is. And it's just so powerful to have a peek behind the curtain to more of that. And so, of course, you could also check out Pooya on Twitch. He's just Pooya on Twitch. Pooya on most platforms, or Pooyaism on different platforms. And of course, there's the brand new Pooya and Liana Lounge, which I love and enjoy checking out, only in its second week right now. And I hope you keep tuning in, keep supporting and watching them over on YouTube or listening wherever you get your podcasts, because they are premiering every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Some quick plugs before I get to Pooya's intro. Please check out Patreon, robhaswebsite.com/Patreon or patreon.com/RHAP. On the free tier of Patreon, you can check out 15 Minutes with Friends. We'll have a couple of those coming out this season, and it's just some exclusive content for the patrons around these podcasts, building on them, and I've had so much fun with those. We got just a little bit looser in those environments with some rapid fire questions. You could leave a voicemail. Please leave a voicemail. Shout out to Joy Davis for leaving a voicemail just most recently. Speakpipe.com/podfriends. Let me know what you think of this episode. Let me know what you think of Podfriends overall. past episodes, I'll check them out toward the end of the season in a few weeks. Tell a friend about Pod Friends. Like, tag RHP on social media, posting about Pod Friends. Let me know that you're listening. Tag me, Matt Scott GW. I will respond if I see your posts. And again, just like so thrilled to have you all on the journey. But without further ado, let's get into the interview with Pooya. Making his way to the podcast, the leader of the Less Than Two crew. You know him as a Twitch partner, the Pooya of Pooya Fridays, the world's leading expert on the Traitors, and the busiest man in podcasting and live streaming. Coming to you from outside the brand new Pooya and Liana Lounge, please welcome the Twitch stream dream, the passionate, persistent, hardworking, underrated, kind-hearted, relatable, fun, eloquent, supportive Pooya. Man, wow, Pooya, we're doing it. It's actually happening. Finally. Officially. Oh my gosh, you're on Pod Friends, on the Pod Friends couch. How does it feel?
Feels good. I'm excited. I've been listening. I've been keeping a close ear to Pod Friends from its inception, and it's nice to get asked. It's nice to get asked, Matt.
Yeah, no, the problem, you're one of those guys. Like, you could be the season, Pooya. I don't think I need to have anyone else. You could be the season.
Stop it.
People will tune in. But no, it's so interesting because I feel like so many people know you so well, or they feel like they know you so well, or they follow you so closely. But I mean, beyond the Terran show, which was like 7 years ago that you did that interview, have you been interviewed about you?
No, unless I've talked
That's
about
kind of
myself
insane.
on streams. Not really, because when I'm on a podcast that's about a show, I know what the assignment is. You might get an anecdote about what's going on with me or my past, but not really. There's not really been a deeper dive into those pools since.
Oh my gosh, that's kind of bizarre, but it's also, so I was going back and listening to that episode, which I was like, holy crap, this is baby Pooya, like baby Pooya in the RHAP streets. But by my math, this is probably about 10 years since you've discovered RHAP. Are we at about your 10-year anniversary?
We're closing in on it for sure. I think the end of the year will mark 10 years of being like having joined Patreon and become a patron of RHAP. But that being said, I think around this time, yes, because if Kagi, yes, because no, was it 2014? Actually, no, it has surpassed 10 years, Matt, because okay, so actually I lied. I think I've been a patron from December of 2014. So what happened was when Kagion was going on, that's when I had fallen in love back with Survivor, had been watching some of the older seasons, and then had discovered podcast proper. So I went ahead and started listening. And that summer of 2014, I used to live with a bunch of my university roommates. They all left for the holidays, for the summer vacation. And I was not leaving for another month. So I was alone at home. A lot of my friends in Ottawa had moved out, had left already. So for that month, I was binging RHAP podcasts and playing GTA 5 online, which had just released for online. So I have very vivid memories of just binging hella podcasts at the time.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's interesting because so much has evolved. We'll get into it. But literally just because I'm staring at you now, and I feel like anytime you podcast, people should be watching the video version because the quality is always there. But like, how has your setup alone evolved? Pooya, you literally have a Pooya sign, LED sign behind you. Obviously things I'm sure have evolved over time, but how has your setup evolved over time? Only because I feel like one day I hope to have the crisp professional vibes that you have, but we're getting there slowly.
A little bit at a time. Well, that's how it all came to be, was piece by piece, because when I first moved and started streaming that era, like that early 2020 era, I had a laptop that would just be out of breath the minute I would start it. It would make so much noise. I had
Yeah.
it propped up on 2,000-piece puzzle boxes to get it level with my eyes. And
Yeah.
then I had taken over the dining room table as like my main setup, but there was wires running everywhere. It was a tragic mess. And then in the winter of 2020, that's when I bought I did some research. I bought all the components to build my own PC. I'd never done it. Built my own PC from
Wow.
scratch. Yeah. I then invested in a brand new camera, which I've got here,
Yeah.
a mirrorless camera. And then when I moved to this place is when I got the light fixtures in the back that you can see. This LED sign I actually got from Twitch directly for participating in their hype challenge about a
Right.
year and change ago. So it's still been a work in progress. This chair I got about a year ago because the chair I had previously was not doing my back any favors. I had a lot of
Yeah.
back pain and I was sore a lot. And then I got this and you know, it's been a lot of work. The more I started doing stuff here full time properly, the more I felt like I should invest in it because then it'll all come back and it's for the long betterment of myself and for the longevity of the program. It's best to be as equipped as I can be.
Yeah, I didn't realize that back pain would come up so much on this season of Podfriends, but Sam Moore, Sam Moore and I are both back pain people. Not even because of podcasting, just life. So I'm
It's,
glad you have
you know,
the ergonomics is the word I'm looking
ergonomics.
for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that you don't expect, especially because like I'm, you know, the job is relatively sedentary. I'm in this chair for a long time. And it was just realizing that you gain bad habits of just sitting. Like right now, I'm sitting up straight. I noticed that by the end of the tenure on that old chair, I was like sitting like this a little bit, and like that's got my
Yeah.
back put in two spots, and I got knots and stuff. So, hey, it's important to stretch. It's important to take breaks. It's important to go on walks, and it's important to invest in a better chair so that you've got your back is being hugged by a lovely, comfortable piece of furniture.
Look, well, I mean, well, I'm sure we'll be all over the place, as is my
Oh yeah.
specialty. But I will say, like, this is one of your setups. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the Pooya and Liana Lounge. I just want to
Thank
bring that
you.
up. As of this recording, it's only been one episode that's come out, but yet another setup that you have. There's so much more to talk about beyond that, but I feel like in the spirit of the setup and knowing that you're someone who's like so I don't know, so like invested in and thinking about the visuals and everything else. Like, what is that setup? Is that a freaking green screen behind you, or is that a real like wall setup? What is going on? I need to know the truth.
You want the
This is
truth?
Pod Friends, Pooya. I can't handle the truth.
Oh, so you can't handle the truth, so I'm not going to tell you. I'll lie to you
I
then.
Yeah, I'll take whatever you'll give.
Okay.
But I'm curious about how you even got to that. Just because I'm assuming you don't have a whole studio just for the Pooya and Liana set, though it's professional to that
Well, thank
extent,
you.
right?
I'm very happy that that's how it's coming across because that's really what we wanted it to be. So with the setup, so what happened was I'm going to give you more than you asked for, which I feel like is the
Please.
Pod Friends way.
That's always what I
So
want.
what happened was before we kicked off season 12 of the Masked Singer podcast, we had our meeting with Robin Scott, as we do at the beginning of the season, just kind of like it's kind of like the temp check the host to see how they're feeling about the show and stuff like that. And really what it came down to was that conversation got us to, okay, do you think that the show is currently more like people coming in for the Masked Singer experience,
Yeah.
or is it Pooya and Liana? And I was like, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. Given how we are doing the podcast, it's basically become 80% me and Liana, 20% Masked Singer, both from, I think, audience and content. Like we're talking a lot less about the show because while the Masked Singer has been fun, it's been 12 seasons. They're running 2 a year like it's Survivor, and the
Yeah.
formula is the same. Once you and once the first couple episodes go and we've already kind of deduced based on our clues who the person could be and we've gotten better at it, you kind of run out of stuff to talk about. So it's like we'll talk about the performances, the extra clues we get, and then it's just vibes. So we talked about, okay, well, if this would be the last season of the Masked Singer, would y'all want to do a different podcast? We said yes, and then we got off that call immediately. Liana and I were like, brainstorming what we wanted, and we landed on what we have now very quickly, which was, we think that it would be a lot of fun to do a weekly podcast where we're not constrained by reality TV or any TV show for that matter. We can share insight. We can share what's going on with us on a weekly. We get on tangents so much in this house. There's a lot of laughs that happen here that y'all don't see. So I was like, let's give them some of it, but not all of it, because some of it has to stay special for us. But we thought that there was something there to do. And from there, we brainstormed podcast name ideas. We brainstormed formatting ideas. And then, to your question, we talked about the setup, because we thought there's a type of show that's not really prevalent on RHAP at the moment, and that's the live in-person experience. And we happen to be able to do that. So let's talk about it. We invested in invested in a whole mixer for the setup. I got the exact same camera I use here for that. So we got a second camera. We got 2 big lights, studio lights for the room.
Wow.
And then I already had a new laptop, so I was like, we'll run it all through that. That's fine. We ended up we bought the 2 chairs that you see on the studio stage. Like, we bought those 2. And to answer the question about the background. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, side note about the chair. Do you only have 2 chairs? This crossed my mind as I was watching it, because I'm like, but what if they have another guest that joins in? Is there a 3rd chair? Is there a 4th chair? Do you need 2 more chairs?
In the event that we have an in-studio guest, we will cross that bridge when we get there.
Okay, so as of now, only those 2 chairs. As of now,
we got the 2 chairs. Yeah. I mean, I think it would be very, like, it looks a lot bigger than it is. I think it's a very cramped space ultimately. So a 3rd guest would be a fun challenge to see how we could do that. But so the background, we got a backdrop. We bought a backdrop that we put on the wall for the recording. So sorry to shatter the illusion, but it's not a brick wall. But also, if anyone asks you, it's a brick wall, don't break the illusion for them.
But wait, it's not a green. Is it a green screen or not a green screen?
No, it's not a green screen.
Okay, because I was gonna say, it looks like, I figured it wasn't a brick wall, but it looks like a legit setup.
Cool. No, it's not. I have a green screen here that I don't use often. But even that green screen is really for one person. So we would have had to get like a whole wall size green screen, which we did not ultimately end up going with. We like the brick aesthetic, and we were like, let's do this. If we end up wanting to change it, we just have to look for another backdrop and throw that in for like our 2nd season, or like our 2nd year, however we go about it. So
yeah, no, I mean, there's so many different directions to go, and we'll come back to the Pooya and Liana Lounge, but like, something that's kind of mind-blowing to me is that you mention like so many of the improvements to your setup, like professionalizing everything, only really, I guess it's been a number of years at this point, but like 2020 is when you brought in a lot of those updates, which is kind of mind-blowing to me, because you are one of those people, for me at least. Like, I joined as part of the class of 2020, of course, and I feel like coming in, I'm like, there's you, like, there's Taryn, there's Melissa Denny, there's Josh Wigler, Mike Bloom, like, the list goes on. And in my mind, you've always like had all of your some might say shit together, which I mean, I feel like you have, but that's kind of one of the things I want to talk about with you, because to me, like, looking at you in particular, like, you've got it, you've had it together. I feel like most of the time, for a long time before, as a podcaster, I was probably tuning in audio only, but there's still that. But I guess I'm curious, and I don't know if we'll get more into like your backstory and everything else, but I'm curious, like, what has that evolution been like for you as a podcaster, or as I thought of before this? Like, what would you say some of the eras have sort of been of your evolution? Because I mean, if people are just tuning into the content that you're making, especially just on RHAP, without everything you're doing on Twitch, where you give more of the behind the scenes, like, I think it's hard to appreciate just all of the like work and the evolution you've had as a content creator.
First of all, I appreciate everything you just said. Genuinely,
I appreciate that.
There's a lot, and listen, you've given me the time, and I want to give you the content. I want to give you as much as I can here. So I wanna rewind back. You
Go way
mentioned
back.
that when you came in class of 2020, it was like, oh, Pooya is one of the people who has his shit together. Like you named
Mhm.
me next to like Taryn, next to
Yeah.
Josh, Mike. So when I first get into the scene, as you
Mhm.
may know, as many people listening may know,
Yeah.
I got in through So You Think You Can podcast was a thing Rob was kicking around. They wanted
Mhm.
more live feed correspondence for Big Brother content, and there was this competition. I applied. I used to, at the time, I was working overnights, overnight shifts, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. I was coming home 7 a.m. I'd be awake till about noon. Then I'd sleep
Wow.
and I'd wake up at 9 and walk to work and do that all over again. So,
Pooya.
yeah,
Damn. That's a
yeah,
lot.
that was me.
Ugh.
That was me for like a good year and a half, maybe 2 years before I switched up. So, I remember being in this position where I saw this application thing go out, and
Mhm.
I used to listen to this back in the day, the LFC roundtable, or the
Yeah.
LFC would do stuff on the Happy Hour with Jordan Parhar, and it would
Mhm.
be Taryn, Brent, Alex, and Jordan sitting there making rankings, ranking seasons, debating, laughing, analyzing, breaking things down. I was like, I really like this one because I watch a lot of things that I like, so I like them. This
Yeah.
was one of the few things in my life which I was like, I could do that. And I think I would be good. And this was at an era where like I'm trying to big myself up,
Mhm.
insecurity has been an in and out relationship with insecurity where I have moments of high confidence, moments of big
Yeah.
insecurity. And I was like, I think I could do that. And so after a shift one day, I sent my application in. You have to also send a video. I recorded the video,
Mhm.
and I had a professional micro. I had a microphone,
Yeah.
which I used, and it was because like back in like 2012, I had bought this mic thinking I'd do something with it, and it sat in a closet and did not get used for 3 years until this moment.
Mhm.
Um, so then I get greenlit. Rob puts me on. There's 10 people participating. Then I find out this twist where they've had the three current LFC in Alex, Brent, Taryn. So they did a draft of the 10 of us, and we got put into teams. And I found out the format's going to be you're participating with this team, and there's going to be a public vote. And then whoever the public votes for, the highest vote getters will go to the second round. And then the highest vote getter from that group goes to the final three. And then the final three becomes the final two. And then the final two public votes
Mhm.
person wins. And I was like, okay, fun. I like this. I think this will be fun. I was anticipating getting feedback because I knew people get, I'm part of the community. So I know people are going to
Yeah.
get passionate about stuff like this. Rankings, people love to give their opinions. And I was like, I can learn a lot from this experience. This is good. And again, I'm like now feeling a little confident. I'm like, I'm gonna give it a good go. And then I
Mhm.
see the team I'm in. And I'm in with specifically one person that stood out to me was Adam Bongiovanni, who
Mm.
Adam was a part of a YouTube channel that had like 200,000 subscribers at the time. Could have been more, could have been a little less, but it was in the six figures. And I was
Mhm.
like, this is a public vote, fam. I'm not making it through. I knew I
Yeah.
wasn't making it through at that point. I was like, even if it's a soft tweet of like, I'm doing this thing, that's already more votes than I can generate. And so on the day the cast dropped, I realized, okay, realistically, I'm not making it through. That's all fine.
Mhm.
However, what I can do is put my best foot forward and take this opportunity to learn something. And again, just do the best I can.
Yeah.
So I do the first episode, the first one we did. That was all the other ones were recording in the evening, like 7 p.m. Ours was on a Saturday at noon. I used to work
Mhm.
weekends at this time, only Friday nights, only Saturday nights, because I was still,
Yeah.
so I had to leave my shift early. I left at 5 a.m. I got home. By the time I slept, it was like 7 a.m. I woke up at 11 p.m., did my catch up for the pod, do the podcast. I survived the first round, but then I got a lot of feedback. Some of the feedback I got was I'm not making enough eye contact with the I'm constantly,
Oh
because
my
I'm
gosh.
very hard with maintaining eye contact even in person. So
Yeah.
I got that feedback, talking into the mic. I got, and I read everything when it comes to stuff I
Mhm.
do. I read everything. I know that there can be some harsh truths in there. I know there can be some unfounded criticism in there that maybe I disagree with, or just people don't like me, whatever. But I know that there's good things to improve from it in there. So I read everything. I still do to this day. And so I came into the second one knowing to be more vocal, knowing to ask more questions, kind of be a little bit more involved. And I felt really good about my showing in that one. Again, knowing I'm not going to make it to the next round, I was like, I got to do the most that I can. Boom. So that happens. Get that done. Lovely stuff. I don't make it. But you talked about eras. And the reason why I've taken you all the way back here, this was the start for me. This was the start of, okay, I'm good at this, or I can be good at this. And I can stand to learn some things. And so a couple months go by and Rob Game Changers is coming. Rob puts out reaches out to the So You Think You Can podcasters and says, we're doing this Game Changers profile thing. If you're interested in talking about any of these survivors, let us know. And I was like, well, I didn't win the thing. And I'm sure there's like other people that are, going to be getting some, the top picks. So I was like, I'll just throw my name out for the one I want, which is Malcolm. And I'll throw I think Sierra Easton was like the other person I threw, not really knowing what to expect. And I was told, you have Malcolm. I was like, holy crap, I got Malcolm. Cool. And so the good thing about having Malcolm was there was a lot of stuff to watch in preparation. So there was the 2 seasons Malcolm had already been on. He had done this other show, like Wayfaring, I think was called, like a web show.
No idea.
He was part of Mr. Survivor on RHAP. So I had a lot of content to watch and talk about. And I felt like I did really good on that. And that was, to me, that was the start of the podcasting era. And I say this because I remember very vividly, it was my birthday, 22nd of February, 2016. It was, I think, my 24th birthday. Yeah, 24th birthday. And I'd gone out for drinks with my roommates. And I was outside, this back when my smoker era. I was having a smoke outside. And the podcast dropped. And it was on my birthday. So the one I did dropped that day. And this is also when I found out me and Shannon share the same birthday. So it was very cool. And I got a lot of good, positive, feedback on that. And I felt really good. Now, after that, I ended up in the live feed updaters grouping where they started doing the live feed updates as a daily thing where they talk about feeds. And in its early infancy, there wasn't really obviously there was less of us at the time too. There wasn't any set dates or rhyme or reason to them. Some of these, I remember booking these was a little wild because there were days where I was around, and if I got the call, if I got the ask at 11 a.m., I was ready for noon to talk about it, 1 hour notice. And because at this point I had moved my work schedule to evenings, I would work from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. I was around. So if they asked, I was there. If they asked, I was there. I would pull any opportunity, I would pull up. So the reason why, and now we go to the Masked Singer era, is important to me, is because that was the first time I was approached to cover a show myself. So for the next the 2 years in between, So You Think and Masked Singer, live feed updates were the only place you'd see me. I had been asked and helped with I did a BNB episode one week where the guests backed out. But for the most part, that was my business, was doing the live feed updates, starting to get Pooya Fridays becoming a thing more and more and more. So it was great. But then I get the ask from Masked Singer. And
which what did that feel like? Because I feel like that's the transition from when so much of what you're saying, I resonate with in the context of RHAP's class of 2020, when RHAP probably, there's the whole process, hundreds of people apply. They probably chose 100 different podcasters to cover different things, which as you could see over time has ended up being a much smaller group of people who you'll still see on RHAP. It wasn't a competition in the way that So You Think You Can podcast is, but that transition from at least for me, from doing it was a handful, 3 or 4 of the Big Brother recaps, to then a few months later, shout out to Mari, being on the Wrestling Wrap Up and having a show, shout out to the Wrestling Wrap Up. That in itself was insane, and then there were more evolutions beyond that with Pod Friends and the Pride is Spoken and the like. But what was that like for you? Because it sounds like, and you mentioned like the self-confidence of it all, but like you did that come out of nowhere did it feel like it came out of nowhere for you, or did you see that like being asked to have your own show coming?
So I never asked for my own show.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I wasn't as privy to how to approach things, and I
Mm-hmm.
never wanted to come in from a place of like I am not necessarily demanding, but I didn't want to put
Mm-hmm.
like Rob and them in a uncomfortable spot where they're like, we don't really have shows, but like So
Right.
I never asked. I was like, if you call me, I'm there. So I remember, I believe, I don't remember how deep into Masked Singer season 1 it was, but I had watched the show and I definitely tweeted about it. I was enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get this email saying, hey, we were thinking of doing a Masked Singers podcast starting with season 2. Would you be interested in hosting? And what they say is true, y'all. You always remember your first. So no matter where
Mm.
I've ended up and gone, Masked Singer is a very soft spot for me because that was the moment where I realized they trust me. They trust me enough to give me a vehicle here. Because at the
Yeah.
time, too, there weren't a lot of podcasts that were non-Rob podcasts, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Taryn Show was a thing.
Right.
Ali and Brian had The Challenge. Haley and Amy had The Bachelor. The
Yeah.
B&B was a thing. But there weren't a lot of other properties going on at that time. So to get the Masked Singer ask was surreal. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I would love to host this. Well, thank you for the opportunity. And then I'll never forget this. So then Scott
Uh-huh.
messaged me and was like,
Yeah.
hey, so we were thinking you get a co-host. Is there anybody you know that is watching the show, that is a fan of the show, that one of the podcasters that will be down? And
Mm-hmm.
at this time, Liana and I are
Uh-uh.
quietly a thing. And I was like,
Ooh.
I can think of somebody. Let me get back to you. Liana, would you like to co-host the Masked Singer podcast with me? And that was an easy yes. Liana and I had always loved the little opportunities we had gotten to podcast together, especially at this
Mhm.
point being long distance. It was like more things to do together was great. So I get the go ahead. Liana's my co-host now, and that first season of Masked Singer will always forever be in my mind as one of my favorite seasons of a show to cover. The season itself was great. The format had still not gone stale for us. The
Mhm.
people they brought on the show, we loved a lot of them already independently of the Masked Singer, and that was a very surreal moment. This was at a time where now I had learned, the listeners were messaging and like talking to us more. Someone like I was enamored with the leopard from that season
Mm.
who was spoiler alert 5 years later, Seal was the leopard.
Right.
And
Yeah.
someone had drawn the leopard to my likeness, which was absolutely
Mm.
wild to me. So many good things have come out of the Masked Singer pod. We've gotten messages from patrons whose children would listen to the podcast and really love the podcast. We recorded like a birthday cameo for one of them, and it was the
Wow.
start of something really special because it felt like I had a place now to try and solidify. And I took it very seriously, Matt. I listened to
Mhm.
every podcast back twice, and I would edit out
Wow.
any bad background audio. I learned how to edit very early on because I wanted to make sure the best product was going out there. I asked Scott to help me with like teach me how to do that. And I
Mhm.
started doing that. I still do that for all my podcasts now. Every podcast I record, I will edit myself and send with the the breaks here and there, give them the notes that need to be there. Because I love what I get to do. And
Yeah.
I'm giving you something, I want to make sure it's the best possible thing I am giving or I am capable of giving at the time until I can get better.
Did you learn editing like before podcasting, or did you learn that because of
Because of
podcasting?
because of
Okay.
everything I've learned with regards to whether it's editing YouTube videos, editing any kind of content, all of this I did not learn anywhere else but as I was going along with podcasting. I will say this, and this will echo true forever, I think.
Mhm.
YouTube is a incredible source for so many of these things The amount of
Yeah.
tutorials out there on how to use Premiere Pro, how to use Audacity, how to use OBS if you're looking to stream. It's unlimited resources available, and there's some content creators that you will connect with more that'll give that are teaching you stuff
Hmm.
that you'll just pick up like that. Everything I've learned doing green screen work, anything, all of it has come from YouTube. Aside from the beginning where, like I said, Scott gave me the
Yeah.
basics of running Audacity.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because that's like one of the pieces of advice I feel like I give anyone who's like, "Hey, how do I get into this thing?" Whether it's podcasting, whether it is like stuff with my full-time job, which includes a lot of video and interviewing and everything else. I just tell people like just start doing it, and it might not be great, it might not be perfect, but like literally that's what makes you good enough to then like actually
Yeah.
be paid to do it, actually make it a career. I think I was just telling someone the other day, like with my job back in it was 2017, I started interviewing people over Zoom, and it like some of them are so cringe now looking back in a way that they
Oh
weren't cringe
yeah.
at the time when but like so cringe looking back. But then I'm like, yeah, I've been working on like interviewing people. I've been working on editing. I've been working on all these pieces, which like it might not be perfect. I feel like everything could always be better, right? But like that's the stuff that makes you like great where you're at the point where it's like, oh yeah, Pooya, you've always been amazing at this to me, right?
No, and that's the
Yeah,
thing, right? I was not. I've gone back and watched my first So You Think You Can podcast on stream
yeah.
before. We've gone back. I think last year we watched back my first ever stream. Actually, we did that on our 24 hour stream, the
Wow.
first one. But even then, I was like, there's a lot to learn here.
Yeah.
Every New Year's Eve, I run a New Year's Eve stream where I ring
Hmm.
in the new year with anybody who's watching, the viewers who are at home for the night, for example. And we have a clip show of all the clips from the last year. And just the evolution, seeing how things have changed in a year's time is incredible. I will say, I want to echo what you said about the advice of
Yeah.
starting this stuff. I I will always say this: if you're looking to get into this space, the advice I give is number one priority should be a microphone more than anything. Like a regular standard webcam will work. You want the best audio you can for this content before the
Hmm.
video, and the video, a webcam will suffice. Like you don't need the really top end
Yeah.
camera. That's more of a later, if you've become more serious about it, or you're like, okay, I can justify that. In the beginning, you don't need that. A microphone's all you need, and then just the willingness and want to do it. You learn a lot about, even if there's no one listening, you learn a lot about just hitting record, finishing. You learn about editing by editing that, and then just hearing
Hmm.
yourself back. You pick up stuff. I've picked up along the years filler words I use. I've clocked onto what I do,
Right.
noises I might make that I've clocked on and I do, and I've been good about fixing those just because I have been listening back for it. I'll give you an example, and this I
Yeah.
almost don't want to do because it's almost like a glass shattering moment. I feel like I've learned recently in the last like 4 months, there's a word I use a lot that has kind of become my bridge, and I've
This is
been making an
groundbreaking. Like
effort to
this is
remove it.
shocking. This is
Yeah,
shocking. This feels like Pooya. This feels like teaser clip. Pooya's working working his way up
it's
to.
it's the story of
But like, what is it?
self-improvement. You learn more.
What?
It's ultimately, I use the word ultimately a
Oh.
lot.
Huh.
And I've been trying to stop, not because it's better than umming, right? But at the same
Yeah.
time, I'm like, I don't want to lean. I don't want to lean on this word. I want to be as polished as I can. So I've been attempting to not use it as much. There's moments on podcasts where I'm like, and I'm like, oh, I'm about to say ultimately, don't do it. But then again, I sometimes I end up saying it, sometimes I don't. But it comes from the listening back to yourself, learning more about your habits, what you do. For example, with the Pooya and Liana Lounge, we did the first
Mhm.
episode, and I was having a tough time watching it back because I was looking at myself and I was like, why am I not? I'm looking weird. I feel like I'm not looking at Liana. I feel like I'm looking into the
Hmm.
wall. Didn't end up being that big of a deal because again, you're going to be your own harshest critic typically. Wasn't
Yeah.
that big of a deal, but by episode 2 I felt more comfortable, and I think that was more so a getting used to a new environment more than it was me doing things that were wrong. But
Hmm.
I know some people like, I can't listen back to myself. I love listening back to myself. I know that sounds very narcissistic, but there are moments, there are stuff I do that I don't listen back because I'm like, I thought that was cringe, I can't do it again. But I feel like there's a lot to be learned about studying your own
Yeah.
tape. pretty much.
No, I agree. I think that's huge. And also, like I would not say I'm someone who particularly like to narcissistic level enjoys watching back my own tape, so to speak. But I'm definitely comfortable with it now. It's like it's what you should do in order to get better.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's fun. Like God, there's so many different podcasts I think of, but like one of them, like over on Recap Kickback, me, Chappelle, and Mari were talking about the Tyler Perry show, Beauty in Black, which is a hot mess. And I'm
Mhm.
just like, let me tune in to listen back to the mess that was, just to like relive the experience. Or we
Yeah.
just like literally we just did talked about Girls Gone Wild over on Crime Scene, and I'm like, what did we even say? Like, let's dive into that. So I think it's good to get over those hesitations around hearing your own voice, seeing yourself, and then also learning ways that you can improve. Because I will say, I remember when I first started podcasting that I couldn't figure out on all of the BB recap podcasts, I couldn't figure out my lighting. And I felt like
Hmm.
with my lighting, it was so bright, but also it was so shiny. And it's funny,
Mhm.
I don't like go back and look back at that now a lot, but I remember looking back like, what was I doing? I was trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
And it's important to like try to figure things out rather than like going in blindly without
Oh,
taking
yeah.
the time to learn how you could get better.
To me, this is the equivalent of, how like people who go to the gym quite a bit or
Yeah.
are bodybuilders, they'll like check themselves out in the mirror, they do a couple
Hmm.
flexes, they look at this like, oh, this
Hmm.
needs more definition. That's the equivalent for me of like watching back my content or listening back to my podcast. That's me looking at the mirror, be like, okay, that could use some work. Okay, maybe this area, that area.
Hmm.
That's the mirror I'm comfortable looking in. Which
Yeah.
again, different for everybody. So I'm not, by no means am I saying this is the solution for everybody. This is just kind of how I operate. Um, so to go back to the,
Yeah.
continuing the era conversation.
Yes.
So then Masked Singer's doing well. We're doing this. We're doing a couple scenes. Then I'm moving. I move
Hmm.
here. I move in with Liana. And the decision to go public was, well, they're gonna know when I do the live feed update next week that I'm in your setup in your bedroom. That's gonna be a weirder thing to communicate if it's kind of like
Right.
no warning given. But from there, at the time, still in 2020, I still had the Masked
Hmm.
Singer only. Pooya Fridays has become more of a constant. Like Friday
Yeah.
mornings, you'll see me. Everything else, I'm doing guest spots, and I'm having a good time doing it. It's lovely. It's delightful.
Yeah.
Um,
And at that same time, like full time professionally, like what were you doing?
I
Was it like
listen. I
just like
was
figuring
no,
things out?
I was
Yeah.
I was working a managerial position at a bagel shop for
Okay. Yeah.
at that point full time for about 3-4 years. About
Okay.
3-4 years is apt. Yeah. So
Mhm.
I had gone from night shifts there to evening shifts to then I moved into the morning shift. So I was working
Right.
7 a.m. to 3 p.m. 5 days a week, off Fridays, off Saturdays. That
Mhm.
was my job. And then I move here. The world locks down. The day after I landed, the borders between Canada and US shut.
Oh
So
my
it
god.
was intense. It was an intense move.
Yeah.
And so now I'm home. Liana's home.
Mhm.
She still got work to do from home. I don't got a lot of work to do from home at this point. I got the
Yeah.
podcast, but for the most part, we're going through the growing pains of both cohabitating and sharing a smaller space. And
Mhm.
she's lived alone for how many years? I've lived with a roommate, not a partner, for how many years? How do
Right.
we coexist? How do we learn how all this works? Um, and then this is where we get to like May, because I'm there about a month and a half when I start thinking, okay, I need my own space, not physically. I'm not
Yeah.
saying I need my own room or whatever, but I felt like I needed a place to kind of shine creatively. I don't have a
Mhm.
space, I don't have like an office in here to like decorate or do my own thing.
Yeah.
Online, it's a lot of property. You can carve your own space out online. And I had
Mhm.
toyed with the idea of streaming as early as like 2019. I remember very vividly, I had a coworker who had a capture card that you can use to capture game footage on your Xbox or on your,
Mm,
Switch or
yeah.
whatever console, basically. And he had had it. he doesn't use that anymore. And he had offered it to me. He's like, do you want this? Because he had heard me talk about that. And I was like, I mean, I feel bad taking it off your hands for free because this is again like $100-something piece of equipment, but I also couldn't justify buying it. I was like, I'm not gonna do what I did with a microphone like 5 years ago, where I bought it and I didn't use it for like 3 years. So then the last Christmas I was there, we had all the coworkers had gotten together. We had done a gift exchange, and one of my coworkers thought it'd be funny to gift me an authentic Real Madrid jersey, a soccer football jersey, with a custom name on the back. Only it wasn't my name. He had put Daryl's name on the back, the guy who has the capture card, because me and Daryl had a roasting relationship. We made fun of each other so much in front of people. So I got trolled with that. But then
shout out
I was
to
able to, shout out to Daryl, wherever he may be. I swapped that jersey for the capture card. That felt fair. I was like, this is an authentic jersey. It has your name on it. And he wanted it. And I was like,
what?
Want to do a swap? He said yes.
Wait.
Yeah. So
Wait,
now
that's hilarious. That's perfect.
It worked
actually.
out. That was my Christmas present, was a capture card
Had
at that
his
point.
name on it. Perfect.
Yeah. I mean, it couldn't have been a match made in heaven better than that.
Yeah.
So
right.
Now when I'm thinking about streaming, I'm like, well, I do have the capture card. Because initially I was like, maybe I'll stream like games. I'll play games. That's what I'll do. But then I was like, I don't know if that's for me, because I also am someone who I'm very aware of the audience. You know, when I'm making content, or whether it's podcasting or streaming, it's a two-way relationship to me. It isn't me just turning my camera on and doing whatever I want. There has to be give and take. I want to give the people what they want, and I want to enjoy doing that. Because if I'm not enjoying that, you're not going to enjoy it either, because the energy is not going to, you can't fake that energy. So as a gamer, I was playing FIFA a lot, and I was like, I don't think anyone's going to want to watch this. And honestly, I was like, I don't know how I would put that together. But I did end up using the capture card to connect this camera to my laptop initially. But I wanted my own space. And the reason why, Matt, is kind of how it is with Pooya and Liana Lounge as well, was when I'm on a podcast, I have an assignment. I have a job to do.
Yeah.
When I'm on a live feed update, I'm there to let you know what I thought were good moves, what happened, funny stuff, so very niche social moves that I appreciated, or body language that I appreciated, or even strategy that I thought was good strategy. On the Masked Singer podcast, it's let's break down these clue packages. Let's figure out who the people are. Let's talk about their performances. And so I felt like I didn't have a spot to express and show me, where you're getting Pooya the podcaster. You're not getting Pooya the person. And so I started streaming. Before that, I did about a week and a half, 10 days worth of intense research. I read up everything there was to know about Twitch. I learned everything there was to know about top streamers on Twitch, how they had their come up, people that had their downfall, how do they have their downfall. I watched I watched videos of streamers talking about things that worked for them, things that didn't, what they've learned, if they had like a 4-year career, what did they learn as they went along. And then I also tried to get involved with the culture, as in watch a lot of Twitch news YouTube and learn about what the dramas have been, what the beefs have been. Again, not going to use any of that. Like, I'm not going to become like a reporter on Twitch news, but it was just to understand the space more and come in as prepared as I can be. And then I hit start stream, go live, and I had the dusty webcam, the microphone, this is the elevated puzzle box laptop, and I hit start stream, and I had a schedule carved out before I went live the first time. I already knew we're doing tier list Tuesdays, where I'm going to do a tier list a week. I'm going to bring guests on, different podcasters that I haven't really gotten to know myself, despite being on the network with them. And so on. And from there, that was this time where I think my imposter syndrome got bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. I still suffer. I still deal with it to this day, where I have days, Matt, where I'll wake up and I'm like, do I deserve to be in the spot I'm in? And genuinely, some days I'm like, no, you got lucky. You got lucky. You got lucky that you were here at this time. You got lucky that you started streaming, at peak pandemic when everyone's home. Like, I say these things to myself. And obviously, by the nighttime, I'm like, you're an idiot. Why are you doing this to yourself? Of course you deserve, like, you worked hard to get to where you are. But I deal with that every day. And with streaming, I'm coming in, got a bit of an audience from the RHAP side of things, obviously, but I'm very proud of how I started and what I did there, because you're talking eras, Matt.
Yeah.
Before we get to more podcast eras, it's time for the Among Us era. The
Oh my
video
gosh.
game Among Us is
Yeah.
really what changed the tides for me on Twitch. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the first 6 months of me streaming, I was streaming zero. I can't monetize the stream. Zero revenue. You know, I don't
Mm-hmm.
got subs on. I can't do it. I'm not legally cleared to do that.
Yeah.
Among Us era was important for a number of things. Number one, it's what brought a lot of audience to Twitch from our world who may not have been privy to Twitch like that. And number
Mm-hmm.
two, it was where I made a lot of connections as far as our fellow podcasters go, getting to talk
Yeah.
and play games. Because until that point, I knew, like you said earlier, you roped me in with the Terrans, the Mikes, the
Yeah.
Joshes, the
Yeah.
Alleys, and I didn't
Yeah.
really know them like that. So for me, it
Mm-hmm.
was always like, oh my God, it's Ali Lasher. Oh my God, it's Mike Bloom. So
Wow.
yeah, and Among Us was a way to bridge all of that, and we got together, we're playing these games, you're learning more about our personalities as it goes along, I'm learning more about the people I'm working with on the same
Yeah.
network, and it was very, very surreal, and so, the audience was very much backing it, there was a lot of people watching who had
Mm-hmm.
found Twitch for the first time, who came to Twitch to watch this and stayed, and from there, not only did I become better friends with everybody, I also was able to get to Twitch Partner, which was a huge goal for me.
Yeah.
Within the first 6 months of streaming, I had achieved this goal. And I realized that because for me, like I said, if I'm not enjoying it, I'm not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not enjoying it, I'm not doing it. And it
Mm-hmm.
was just this relationship that worked where I was loving it. I've said this before. I'm not someone who I didn't have passions like that. Like I know people were like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, I want to get straight A's and get into this profession." I didn't have that in my DNA. Or at least I thought I didn't. I was like, "Nope, I'll just find a job, make the paycheck and live day by day as
Wow.
long as the
Yeah.
day is good." Like very baseline like as long as it's a good day, that's good enough for me. Streaming opened my eyes to, oh shit, I have passions. And
Yeah.
I have something I care about now. And I have something that I really want to do well with. And then that opened my eyes more to even the podcasting stuff. I was like, oh my God, this is not just the side thing for me. I really love it. And I have found it. I didn't know I could find it. I
Yeah.
found it. Um, so let me do it. Let me do it right. Let me do it well. So the Among Us era, huge. I also,
Mm-hmm.
at any point, if you want to stop me down and ask anything else, let me know because I'll
No,
just
I
keep
mean,
going.
right here. No, this is actually the perfect point because one, there's like so much that's occurring to me in real time as we're talking about it. So I just appreciate you
Mhm.
going with this and
Of course,
we're
I
like
got you.
we're flowing through. But you know, what you're talking about of like, yeah, I didn't really know these people yet. And this was a way of bringing them together. One, I think is huge for the
Mhm.
community because I mean, like 200 plus, is it just 200 plus Goose Ducks games or is it like,
Just did
okay,
201.
holy crap. Yeah. So it's, it's like all of that, right? And you're bringing people together, you're connecting everyone. But I think sometimes viewers think like, oh yeah, everyone's like in touch,
Friends.
everyone knows each other, like, but really like so often it is you're on the podcast, you have time with people on the podcast and
Yeah.
then you go about your lives, and you're in touch with people here and there, but like you're definitely not in touch with that group, that many people, that group of people all the time. And one thing I want to say that's fascinating to me about your imposter syndrome is I feel like, I'm going to say this. I don't even know what it means, but like imposter syndrome to me feels like a ladder in a way where it's like, okay, my imposter syndrome in part also sees like Pooya and so many others as being like leagues ahead. And I want to make sure you get credit for that. But then at the same time, you have that imposter syndrome. And like I feel like so many of us experience imposter syndrome. And
Mhm.
it's also funny that like there are people who don't see it, which is part of why I'm glad that that comes up in Podfriends conversations. But also, I will say for me, well, I guess there are a few reasons I started Pod Friends. One of them was just that, like, back to something you mentioned earlier around not approaching RHAP with the show or not approaching
Right.
Rob with the show. I remember podcasting a few times with Rob. I think it was like I did a patron show, but also something else with Rob just before that. And Rob said, like, Matt, I just want you like to do more on the network if you want to do on the more on the network. And I was like, I want to do more on the network, right? Rob,
Yeah.
I don't know what I want to do. And I don't want to bother you to presume that like I am worthy of having like this space using, the word you've used. And obviously Rob was so supportive, but like Pod Friends for me is that way of having this like dedicated time dedicated time for a conversation with someone. And if it well I'll just mention this because it will come up on his episode Pod Friends, but like with Josh Wigler, we ended up having
Mhm.
like 4 hours of time together, mostly because we re-recorded the conversation, and we'll talk about that on that episode. But like for me, the goal is just that time to bond with people and like connect,
Mhm.
because we're all so busy, life happens, but like we need more spaces just to connect with each other. And I'm glad that like you have found the Among Us era, the Goose Duck era, as a way of like connecting more with the I was gonna say pod friends, but like the friends really that are in
Yeah.
this community, right?
Because I mean, like before streaming, during the pandemic, Rob had been doing like patron trivia night where
Right.
you could get into little teams of trivia teams and do the trivia stuff. And that's kind of where, like, up until that moment, I had been talking with Liana, obviously, and
Hmm.
Kirsten was the other person I was friends with
Yeah.
properly before this all went down. But in that era, that's when I got to know Matt, got to know Jofo,
Yeah.
got to know Ali, got
Yeah.
to know Scally, got to know Brian. So
Hmm.
and Kalish, like a lot of people I started becoming more cordial with and talking to there. And then with the Among Us, the streaming side, that kind of opened the door wide open. When I started doing the
Hmm.
tier list, I started inviting the podcasters. And my thought was people are going to get to learn more about the podcasters as well as
Yeah.
I. And I feel like that's a
Hmm.
fun way to do. It's a fun, innocent way to do it, where it's like, all right, I'm going to bring Ali Lasher on, someone who I've
Yeah.
not really had the chance to talk to all that much, and we're going to not talk the challenge. We're going to rate candies. We're going to talk chocolates.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was perfect. When class of 2020
Yeah.
happened, I remember the first time I ever talked to Chappelle, I invited him on and we tier listed cartoons from our
Wow.
childhoods. And
Yeah.
so it was a great way to go about it, and it was very important for me, and I didn't realize how important, obviously, till later. But I had just moved. To this day, I've been here, what, 4 years, five
Hmm.
years, nearing in
Yeah.
5 years.
Just
Damn.
about 5. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any friends here.
Wow. Yeah.
I A lot of my friendships are maintained online, and
Hmm.
I have no problem with this. I feel
Yeah.
like getting to go to these events and meet everyone in person is kind of like the good, like, in-person
100%.
experience I need. But because of my background and how much I've spent abroad from family, from friends, I've
Hmm.
gotten very used to the internet being the bridge for me and my friendships and my relationships. So I have
Yeah.
no issue with this. But it was crucial to me, and I didn't realize how crucial it was. Now I do, which is great.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, that it's awesome to hear too. And it's just interesting because like people get that connection through all sorts of ways. Like but internet friends are real friends. And yet at the same
100%.
time too, like I love going to the live shows whenever I can. Like I don't have kids. I don't have any of those expenses. Like that for me, it is it's like going to live shows or like doing things like that where I could be with, our people. Cause for me, like between pod friends and just some of the other podcasting, but also that time in person, like that has what over the last, I mean, almost 5 years since the class of 2020, like that's what for me has helped me settle in so much. And it's like awesome to be at that place where we could be that, so much more connected. Are there other
Yeah.
are we caught up on the eras? Did we catch up on oh my gosh, what's
Okay.
the next era?
So we got to about, I think, as far as the streaming stuff for now,
Yeah.
that's like the era Among Us. We'll get to the later part later. But then we go back to the podcast side because, like I said, the streaming stuff's going well. I'm finding a
Mhm.
new avenue for me. The podcast stuff, I've kind of been, Masked Singer has off seasons, Big Brother has off seasons, so there's not much going on there. I remember having a moment where I contacted Rob and I said, Rob, I don't know who should be at the wheel for this, and I'm not saying I should be. I think RHAP needs a 90-day podcast. I was like, it's one of the biggest shows on the reality TV space. It has one of the most active subreddits of any of these reality shows. It's got mass appeal. There's always conversation around it. I think this is, and it's a franchise that doesn't stop. I think it's a good franchise to invest in. And like I said, I brought it up. I was like, this is me as a consumer thinking this is something we should have. I don't need to be on it. If there's other people on it, that's fine. Rob was like, I love that idea. Would you like to run it? And this was a moment where I was like, yeah, please. I would love that. So that's when 90 Day begins. And this is now my second show that I'm running. And this one felt different. I kind of have felt like my podcasting has been me grabbing different like categories and bringing them together, which I love. So let me explain more. With Masked Singer, initially, I got to, not only do I get to talk to my partner on a weekly on pod, but also it was the clues and the discovery, unmasking the person and investigative work. Then with 90 Day, it's tapping into my experience, the 90 Day, the K1 visa. I know the ins and outs about this visa, but also I like to think I know a thing or two about relationships. Let me give my 2 cents, So I had that. Now that's a new element. Big Brother, we already got the social game strategy stuff going on. That's great. I got that. I'm like getting my fill of all the different genres that I can have. And so 90 Day was huge for me because I felt like, oh my God, this is a non-strategy show. And I'm very happy because I get to talk about non-strategy stuff. And it meant a lot because I felt like a lot of people started getting put onto 90 Day to watch it. I remember I even asked Rob at one point. I was like, Rob, I know you don't have shows at the moment. I would love to have you co-host this next season of 90 with me if you're down. Bringing Rob in and getting to talk with Rob about these wacky couples, non-strategy stuff was surreal. Getting to co-host the podcast with Rob at that moment, you have no idea how that felt. It was,
oh my gosh. Yeah, no, it's insane that you mention it too, because, well, it's funny that you mention it because I haven't thought about it, but like, oh my gosh, I haven't, like, I'm thinking about it now. I have not co-hosted a regular podcast with Rob, and that's a whole other thing that would still be surreal. All
the
these
one-on-one
years
of it all, man. That energy, it's that feeling of like, oh my God, you're on my show. You know what I mean? Like it's different. And so 90 Day was a feeling I got of, I suggested a show that would be good. You trusted me with the show. I feel like it's going well. I'm happy with it. That's also where then we get to like the MILF manner of it all. Like that all kind of came in that into that feed. And after that, I feel like I was kind of figuring out what I was doing because I get asked, I've been asked multiple times, is podcasting your main, is streaming your main? And the realization that it's really it goes hand in hand for me because I felt like there were moments where I was putting too much of my thoughts into the podcast stuff and leaving streaming by the wayside. There's been moments where I put too much on the streaming, not enough on podcasting. But I think now, present day, it's becoming more and more clear because Matt, in the last like 3 years, things have shifted so much. Like like I'm saying, before 90 Day, I had a lot more time and a lot more energy and put a lot of it into streaming. The more podcasts I became a part of, the more I had to start juggling. And I'm someone who time management was my enemy, still can be my enemy. And juggling a lot of projects is hard. Like, so Liana can do 7 things at once and excel at all of them. I can sometimes juggle 2 things at once and I can't handle it. I'll never forget
on that
this.
note, I wonder, like, I don't know this, and you could tell me if this is right, but is Liana just better at like having boundaries around this stuff? I ask this as someone
What do you mean by boundaries?
also struggle. Well, so like, okay, here's what I'm going to spend my time with. Here's what I'm not going to spend my time with. here's what I'm going to say yes to, here's what I'm going to say no to. Because I'm
Yes.
someone, for instance, who wants to say yes to everything and be part of everything, right? Yeah.
Samesies.
You too. Yeah.
Samesies.
Hmm.
It took a long time for me to become a little bit more choosy with my time, if that makes
Right.
sense. Because
Uh-huh.
especially I feel like in the early days, it was ingrained in me of like, if I get a call, I say yes. That's it. I'm doing that. I'm saying yes.
Yeah.
And I noticed with Liana, she became a lot more selective with her time. Liana's RHAP career has been incredible on its own. Like she
Hmm.
comes into So You Think alongside me. That's where we meet, and she finishes in third place immediately. Rob's like, "Would you do Hunted?"
Yeah.
Her and Kurt
Right.
and
Hunted.
Rob do Hunted, which was a lot of fun to watch. And
Hmm.
then her and Mike start the B&B. But I think that she became a lot more, self-discovery, gets to a point where she's like, these are the things that I like. These are the things that I don't like. These
Hmm.
are the things I want to invest my time in. These are the things that I don't no longer need to invest my time into. And she's
Mm.
definitely become a lot more selective. Yeah, I think that's what you asked, right? I may
Yeah,
have
yeah,
blacked out
yeah.
a little
No,
bit.
that sounds about right to me. No, we're on. I like this. By the way, this conversation really reminds me of my pod friends with Akiva, who I feel like there was just like a
Mhm.
flow. There's just like flow through so many different stops on the journey, which is like nice. Like I feel like
Mm.
I need like a nice warm blanket. I have my tea right here. I'm sitting
Love it.
back. I'm on the uh, the Pooya train is not a thing. I'm on the Pooya train though.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Here we go. I'll take
Yeah.
it. I'll take it. But yes, we continue on. I like this. I'm here for it.
All right. So 90 days going well. Also at this point, class of 2020
Yeah.
has happened. I've sat in for a bunch of the interviews and met a
Hmm.
lot of people for the first time. I was going through and if anyone was remotely interested in 90, I brought them on for the pod to both give them the opportunity and also like learn more myself as a host. Because mind you, up until this point, Matt, I have guested and I have
Yeah.
co-hosted with Liana, which is different because we know each other. Like we know each other
Hmm.
off mic.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier to navigate. I am now hosting with people I've never podcasts I've never talked to, people I've never
Yeah.
met. And also I'm in charge of everything. I'm in charge of steering the conversation, formatting, and that was a learning curve of its own. But I'm so grateful that I did go through it that way because I feel like I'm someone who I think you mentioned on the Sam episode that you are an introverted extrovert or the other way around, extroverted introvert.
Extroverted introvert. Yeah, extroverted introvert.
Yeah. So I'm somewhat of a hybrid myself
Yeah.
where I am incredibly shy when I meet people for
Yeah.
the first time. I'm a lot more quiet and a lot more observant, especially
Hmm.
if it's in person. I am the guy who if I pull up to a friend function and I know one person, don't know anybody else, I'm going to be quiet. You might think I'm not having fun. I'm having a great time because I love
Yeah.
observing. I love learning about people, and it comes from this part of me that feels like I don't know how you're going to take me. I'm very
Hmm.
self-conscious of how I'm going to come across, first impressions and all that.
Totally.
I feel like first impression you see me, like when I bring up the imposter syndrome, it's to let people know, hey, I don't know everything that I'm talking about. I'm not like I don't think I'm the authority on this. I don't think what I'm saying is factual, but because of the way I speak,
Hmm.
sometimes it looks like I'm way more confident than I am. I'm incredibly unsure.
Well, I
So,
feel like also just to that point, like
mhm.
it's good when people understand your relationship with confidence because like some people could read that as being either standoffish or confrontational or whatever it is, which is like there
Yeah.
was someone the other day who put like a really nice friendly comment in one of the RHAP threads that I was posting about Pod Friends, like, oh my gosh, how could someone dislike Matt? But the a handful of people who I've run into who I've had like issues with are people who just like don't get that like I have imposter syndrome. Like I am like it's all these million different things that lead to me maybe not being like the oh my gosh, let me run up to you and grab you and hug you and talk to you and all those things just because like normally my energy until I feel comfortable in those with that.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we're talking about this too.
Oh yeah, because once I've observations done, once I'm like, okay, I've had a little soft launch conversation with people.
Mhm.
Now I'm extroverted as fuck in this group. Like you
Yeah,
cannot tell me to
yeah.
be quiet. I'm laughing, I'm making jokes, I'm roasting you, you're roasting me.
Right.
We're doing all
Yeah.
the things. And I feel like doing the podcast and specifically streaming has brought that out of me more. Now I'm a lot
Mhm.
less likely to be quiet and I'm a lot more likely to be a little bit more forward. And it's
Mhm.
because of especially with streaming, I'm constantly talking to people I have either not met or I'm meeting for the first time. I took a lot of pages out of Rob's notes when it
Yeah.
came to the streaming side of things because I have learned to retain people's names or information just off the chat because I'm not doing a
Yeah.
video call, you know? And one of the
Mhm.
things that drew me to Rob and really has made him someone that, not only at this point I can say friend, which is wild to say, but an
Yeah,
inspiration
100%.
really. Because I remember
Yeah.
watching the long 3-hour patron cast back in the day where like it would just be Rob taking calls from patrons once a month.
That's what I'm
And
saying. I remember talking
dude,
about this with Sam early on when I started
yeah.
podcasting, and I said to Sam, I was like, or maybe even to Rob at some point, it's like, Rob, like low key, like that's a masterclass. Like you just talking with folks, you don't even know who's coming up, what they're going to talk about. You're having conversations, you're making them feel comfortable with doing it. Like it's so graceful and I'm so glad you said that because that just crossed my mind. Like those patron casts are next level, and I think I mean I it one like underrated on so many levels for from Rob's perspective. Yeah.
I mean, he would like it's a 3-4 hour call,
Hmm.
and someone will be like, "Yeah, I called in was 10 months ago," and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, you had that thing that happened, right? How did that go?" He remembered
Yeah.
stuff like that, and I just felt like
Hmm.
this is someone who cares about the community they're culminating. Like they care about the thing they're putting together here. You could see the passion, you could see the care about everything,
Hmm.
which really inspired me when it came to me, putting together my community over on Twitch. Was
Hmm.
I genuinely care. You are giving me your time. To me, that is the most valuable thing you can do, which is why I want to make sure the content's the best it can be. I want to make sure you are having a good time whenever you're here. So, anyway, talked about Rob there. To rewind it back, because I'm trying to stay on track here as well.
I love it.
90 Day helped me a lot, and
Hmm.
streaming helped me a lot with talking to people I don't know and not being shy, especially because as the driver of the podcast, I had to make sure that
Hmm.
we were getting places. And that has helped me big time, especially when the other stuff has come along. So that's another era for you. Then we'll call it the office era, this studio era, this stream
Yeah.
setup era. Because I feel
Uh-huh.
like once we moved into this space is when I did another round of investment into my setup. Because before I had the computer I
Hmm.
built, the camera I bought, and then I got this microphone, I got the mixer, and I really started putting it together. Like, what do I want? Now I have the space to express. How earlier I
Yeah.
said internet, I went and got my spot on the internet. Now I was like, this is
Hmm.
my little like area. Let's make this work. And I feel like from this room on, it became more of a reality that what I do is real. Because up
Wow.
until we moved, I had the very temporary dining room table set up that didn't quite feel like it's done, didn't quite feel serious. I got a dedicated room to do this stuff in now. Shit serious. That's how it felt to me.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and
How long have you been in that like that room now?
3 years.
Wow, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah.
cool.
So we've been in the spot for 3 years now, and it was a lot of working from the ground up, figuring out early days, no bookcase in the background, no lighting in the background, and just little by little start putting things together. And um, I feel like I want to make sure I decide smartly where. Oh, okay, I know exactly where I want to go.
Okay.
The next era, I'm going to call the draft era, and here's why. My one of my things. So when I did my So You Think You Can podcast days, I asked a question to the rest of the. Remember, I said like I read some stuff. People were like, Puya's not really talking unless he's
Right.
absolutely
The
directly spoken
feedback.
to. Yeah, and
Mhm.
I was like, hey, what's everyone? what's everyone's bucket list item here? Like, if you had an RHAP bucket list, what would it have in it? And I was like, I'll go first. I said, personally, for me, my bucket list is to be a part of the draft, the RHA, the LFC. That time was LFC draft. I was like, I want to be on the LFC draft. That's what I want. BB23 is rolling up, and I got the call up to be on the draft for the Big Brother draft, and that to me felt like, oh, I have made it. If that makes sense. If I was ever to make it, I was like, this, because up until this point, they've trusted me with the Masked Singer, they've trusted me with the 90, but even like the Masked Singer felt like let's see if he can handle it. Then the 90-day was let's try it and see if it works. This to me felt like, we know you can deliver. Pull up to the draft. Here's a seat. And it was, I can't, even right now, every time a draft is coming out, I'm like, I can't believe I'm part of this. I can't. It's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. And by the way, immediately first draft, I have the final 2 on Big Brother 23. So people want to talk about how
I was gonna say, who did well, there we go.
I had Xavier, Derek F, and I had Sarah Beth. So,
but it's so funny thinking about that too, because BB23 was right before that on the wrestling RHAP up. You, me, Mari, Grace, I want to say did like
we did a Royal Rumble
wrestling with BB23. Yeah, we did a Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
I think Tiffany won the Royal Rumble or something like that. Like it was someone who
that was a fun
obviously
format.
made a big. It was a fun format, but even then, I think back to that, and it's amazing that you're thinking like, I was on the draft, and I remember thinking like, wow, look at the numbers on this podcast. Like, look at all the people watching it. Pooya's on the podcast. Like, people are tuning in. So, like, that, it's again, like, perception is so funny because, like, our perception of ourselves is so much different than other people's perceptions, right? But it's cool hearing you talk through it, because then when I look back, I'm like, okay, that, like, yeah, that it all makes sense. And also it's cool hearing like the little beats of the evolution, because like we're all so in it along the way, whether it's like, oh, 3 years ago maybe starting Pod Friends, like I don't know if it's 2.5 years ago starting the Pride Has Spoken or something like that, but like all of it. So it's cool to look back on and just see what was meaningful to you, because then I'm also thinking about outside looking in. Like I wasn't, like to me, I wasn't like, oh my gosh, Pooya is on his first draft. I'm like, of course, Pooya is on the draft,
Right. That's how you're seeing. You're like, yeah, that makes sense. And I was like, I cannot believe I'm on here. Like, this is at that point, what, like 5-6 years in the wishing that I get it, not even in the making. It's like, I hope sometime I get to this point. Doesn't feel like it's going to happen, but if it does, it's incredible. And that was absolutely amazing to me. I felt like, okay, I'm part of the Big Brother like family now. Whereas up until that point, I was like, I'm doing my 2 cents on the live feed updates. This felt like, okay, I can create lore now. Which obviously, what I mean by that is, I have so much lore in my head from like the LFC days, and then before that, Rob talking BB16. Like, there's so many little bits. These like little moments that people will be like, why is he called Baby Andy? That's lore to me, right? And for me, I was like, I'm part of the lore now. I'm in the draft. Like, this is a thing that's gonna keep working. So that was amazing. And then you'd think, and I think this is why this conversation has actually been very fun for me right now, and why I might be like talking a lot, is because
I love it.
Every single era I've given you, Matt, when it happened, I thought, this is it. This is the peak. This is the top of top of my mountain, basically. Like, this is where I want to get to. And then it keeps going. And then it keeps going. And it's been surreal and amazing. And the reason I say this, and I might be skipping some eras in the middle here, but I want to jump to the Traitors era. Because when the Traitors got announced, I remember the exact message I sent Rob. I said, hey, Rob, this is a show that's coming. I think this is right up my alley. I'm in my, we're doing this weekly Among Us thing. I got that detective work down. I think I can thrive in this show.
Wow.
Please let me do this show. And this was the time that I asked. I mentioned I was always like, I'm not going to say anything. I felt it in my bones. I was like, this put me on
Mhm.
this. I think I can
Mhm.
deliver. So now, when I tell you that, to me, the Traitors almost means the most to me out of all the shows I've done. Mean everything, like mean a lot to me. My
Yeah.
first with Masked Singer, my getting to talk about my life a little more with the 90 Day,
Mhm.
getting to do the draft, do roasting, shit talk, make these silly diss tracks on people. Love
Mhm.
all of that. The Traitors to me feels like my show. And what I mean by that is I think I really understand this show. I
Yeah.
really have a passion for this show. And it makes me happy to know that people respect my takes on it, and some people look to me like I'm gonna know the answers. I'm not. The show is very like there's moments on the show where like no one can explain the logic of how we got here. But I
100%.
feel I mentioned earlier about how I'm insecure. I'm
Yeah.
unsure. Even when I talk with confidence, the Traitors is as close to I felt as confident about something. And
Mhm.
it is a confidence that I never had before the Traitors. Um to be given the keys to what now to me is like part of the big three of the social strategy deduction shows um
Mm.
means a lot, but also is something beyond my wildest dreams. Getting to do exit interviews, Matt, when I tell you that,
Yeah.
that
I know.
is
I was just watching you with Tony, where and I think that's like the first time for me watching you where maybe I had maybe something clicked, and maybe it was just seeing you, and maybe it's like knowing you a little bit better, but like there was something about that where I'm like, this feels different. This feels different.
it has been different because
Hearing
you
him
know
say,
with
Pooya, Pooya, like in the
again
Tony of it all.
Kagion was the season that I started
Exactly.
watching live again. I fully caught back in, and like
Yeah.
the idea that you would have told me, yeah, in like 10 years you're gonna talk to the winner of that season. I'd be like, you are smoking that good stuff. Send some over.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
happening,
Yeah.
and like getting to talk to Netta from BB
Mhm.
Can
Mhm.
covering when I was covering Traders Canada. Getting to interview Kareen, the host of Traders Canada, who then has posted that she watches our podcast every week and we understand the game more than anyone else that covers it.
Yeah.
It again, these are things I'm saying that I am in disbelief that this is what's being said because the imposter syndrome tries to
Yeah.
come in, but then at the same time, like I said, this is also a time where this is the thing I feel most confident about. So it's like
Mhm.
I allow it. I allow myself to not get self-conscious or insecure about it because I'm like, no, this is true. And then then you're like, am I being conceited? No, I don't think so. I think you just feel very confident in what you're talking about. And that is something that
Yeah.
I've not had a lot. Do you know how many live feed updates I've done insecure that what I'm reporting is wrong or what I saw isn't really what was happening? Still to this day, every season, that first live feed update,
Wow.
I have to relearn how to do it. It's tough.
But also it's like I think something that I hope you could uh embrace or give yourself credit for. I mean, the Big Brother community could be ruthless. And yet you Taryn, like you've earned so much love and respect from the community that if you went on and said everything completely wrong, if you were completely off, like it's going to be okay. Like people will have, but and yet I completely understand what you're talking about because that those nerves, like they don't go away that easily. That imposter
No.
syndrome doesn't go away that easily, right? I was like, it's insane because people would think it's insane looking at you, and I'd imagine maybe with me even they think it's insane if I'm telling them about those feelings, but it's true. It's just
Yeah.
like it's a reality of who we are. Those that imposter syndrome, those nerves, those hesitations don't go away that easily, even if it's not like all the way logical, you know?
And I think it's to me, it almost sometimes feels like a byproduct of being very self-conscious and being very much
Yeah.
someone who self-evaluates every day and thinks about
Sure.
it like I'm way too aware of my thoughts, my feelings, my reactions to things, reading something about myself and then having a feeling on it and then immediately opening it up and trying to figure out why it elicited that feeling. I sometimes wish I didn't have it. I sometimes wish I wasn't like that self-conscious because I'm like, seems like it would be a easy blissful life, but at the same time I'm grateful that I have that because it has allowed me to take in the good stuff, take in the constructive, take in the helpful, and improve upon myself, not only as a podcaster or a streamer but even as a person. I am a extremely empathetic person, sometimes to a fault, where
Yeah.
I will feel a lot of things and then that'll make me feel bad and I feel guilty over things that I may not even need to feel guilty about. But to bring it all back with the Traitors, it feels surreal to be seen as the quote unquote, and every time Rob says it, I'm like, Rob, stop it. But the expert, the Traitors expert, the chief Traitors correspondent. And I'm like, me, the same
Yeah.
guy who got on So You Think You Can podcast, all unsure with his light setting to his face. So you said about the shiny
Yeah.
thing. You know how long it
Yeah.
took for me to deal with lights and figure out how to figure that equilibrium out? I'm
Yeah.
looking like an idiot.
Yeah.
I'm like, that guy?
Uh,
He's your expert? Oof. But then I'm like, he fucking is. Can I tell you something? So
Please.
we just did RHAP Traitors season 2.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Predictions mean nothing in the game
Okay.
of Traitors because who knows what's going to happen. When I was doing the commentary for that, I was asked, who's your winner pick? And I was like, I don't think you can really decide who the winner pick is because you don't know who the Traitors are. You don't know who the Faithfuls are. You don't know how this game's going to go. I will say this. I'm looking at Claire.
Right.
I'm looking at Bailey. And I think I'm looking at QT. Claire wins. Bailey, if Bowie Jane votes
Yeah.
Claire out instead of Bailey, Bailey wins. And I was like,
yeah.
do I know what the fuck I'm talking about? Like, that shouldn't mean anything to me, but it gassed me up. And again, like I said, I feel good. I feel good about where I am with the Traitors. I feel good about understanding it, and I'm having so much fun with it. I understand that it's one of the more contentious shows because a lot of people think the format's flawed. A lot of people think that it's not strategic enough or there's not enough incentives to do this or that. I somehow get it, and I don't think it's flawed. I think the format heavily sides with the Traitors over anything, but they're also the titular Traitors. Of course, it's going to side with them, and not every show is going to be balanced from a game perspective. This is more so entertainment first, game second. Just like how wrestling.
Yeah.
It's technical, but at the same time, it is scripted. There are works, there are production that goes into the wrestling, and it's entertainment first. Now, is this show rigged? No. But does it heavily favor the Traitors? Yes. It just depends on whether or not you're watching it to be entertained versus to see like strategic maneuvers play out. And sometimes the strategic maneuvers have worked out and we produce some great winners, but sometimes it doesn't matter. You're not going to make it far if you play a certain way. And I'm okay with that personally.
Wow. So now you're in your Traitors era. This is the era?
This is the era.
You're in
This
your
is the era.
your lounge era, your Traitors era.
Traitors lounge
I do
era.
feel like the Traitors lounge era, which it's like, one, this is really cool to think about because it's making me think about where I am now. You know, about 5 years into my podcasting on RHAP, which is insane to think about. Like I'm having a really hard time with math right now because it's like
I
5
agree.
years since the pandemic started, 5 years since all of that. It doesn't feel like 5 years. And yet I think that Mari and I we're about to do some more wrestling podcasting. That'll be our 4th year doing it, which also feels insane. I don't know where the time goes, but
Same.
it's wild. It's all strange to think about, but I need to ask you because you're in the era now. What do you think the next era will be? And I don't want to bounce past this era as if it's like, okay, what's the next
No.
thing? But
Of
what's
course.
on the horizon, you know? Or what do you want? Like if you had a magic wand, like what would that next thing be? Any goals that the draft was a thing for you. But
Yes.
I'm curious what's maybe up next or I love the question of like, if you had a magic wand, what it would be.
Right. What's interesting, because I feel like with all the eras I've mentioned, and every time I hit one of those eras, it felt like this is it, this is the peak, this is what we've worked towards.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I've never envisioned it of like, okay, how do we get to this? It just kind of happened.
Yeah.
And then when it happened, I was like, oh, this is what I wanted. You know what I mean? Like that's how it's felt. So the truth is, this is my focus as of right now. The next era is the unwritten era.
Mm.
I don't know what that era
Okay,
is going to
Natasha
look like.
Bedingfield.
You get the
We could.
vibes.
I do.
I'm planning to just improve on everything I can, be the best interviewer I can be for the Traitors Exits,
Yeah.
be the best podcaster I can be for Traitors for 90 Day, be more organized, be more ambitious with getting guests with regards to streaming, be creative, think of new ideas to launch, while
Mm.
still providing the scheduled guaranteed content that you're delivering every week. Don't be afraid to try something new, put something new out there.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to work to improve upon myself and my creative expression, whether it is with streaming, whether it is with my podcast. It's to just try and build, try and grow, try and think of new ways and new avenues to go, because it is a passion I have. It brings me a
Yeah.
lot of joy. It mentally has helped me so much. I've told this to my audience on Twitch, but streaming has brought me so much that they don't understand or they may not be aware
Mm-hmm.
of. I've heard some very kind words throughout the years of how, especially in the peak pandemic era, the streaming and the community really helped some people socially and brought people joy. They found friends through it. They got to play games with people. They got to
Yeah.
hang out. And I was like, what do you think it was for me? It's the exact same thing. I got to talk to hella people and meet new people and learn and have this avenue to like just experience joy in an otherwise
Mm-hmm.
very bad time.
Yeah.
So I call it the unwritten era because I truly have never functioned with this is the goal. How do we get there? It's
Yeah.
as long as we keep working and putting positive things there, if it presents itself, it's a fun surprise. And I live for a good surprise. And I'm guaranteed to not feel disappointed. And I think that's kind of something as a self-protection thing for me, is that I don't
Yeah.
have that. I try and not put up an expectation because I can't be disappointed if I don't get that. I don't want to get my hopes
Sure.
up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I also can't envision it. It's like it's not like, oh, there's something I would like to manifest, but I don't want to put it out there and not get it. It's that I can't even tell you what that is. Because
Mm-hmm.
truly, is there a peak beyond where I am right now? As far as
Yeah.
like I don't know, and maybe not, and I would say no if you made me give you an answer, but that doesn't mean I'm unhappy. I know that some people talk about, you always gotta improve, you always gotta, like, work towards the next thing. I'm someone who's been very much in my lifetime content with being in the
Yeah.
now, and if
Yeah.
I have
It's
like, if I'm
important.
happy, what's wrong with that? It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean I'm not ambitious. It's not like I'm gonna settle and lose my ambition. I'm still gonna work on the stuff I'm working
Mm-hmm.
on. I'm still gonna try and improve on them. But if you told me tomorrow, Matt, this
Yeah.
is it. You're not beyond the shows you have, beyond the streams you're doing. There's no more like this is the ceiling for you. I'd be like, it's a pretty goddamn good ceiling. I will take it.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you said you will have to lose 2 of these shows, I would be sad, but I'd also feel happy knowing that there's these other things that I've got going on. I think something I did learn in the last couple of years was to go back to the Liana side of things of like
Yeah.
knowing when to say no. I did learn that. I did become more
Mm-hmm.
aware of that. Picking my battles and not spreading myself too thin, because what had started happening, there was a time where this is a very real thing that happens to a lot of creative people or content creators, is the feeling of, what is the word? It's such a common word. Not overwhelmed.
Burnout.
Damn. Burnout.
Bur-
Thank you. Oh
there
my
we
God,
go.
that was gonna bother me. Thank you so much.
Ooh,
That's
there
it.
we go.
Burnout. I have experienced burnout.
Yeah.
Where there is such a thing as you're doing too much. You're burning the candle at both ends, as they would call it. And it took that for me to realize I need to reel it back in. I need to understand more. Things that I thought don't apply to me do apply to me. For example,
Mm,
I thought I'm never gonna get tired of doing this, and this. And then it was like, oh no shit, you are tired of doing
yeah.
this, and this. And it wasn't
Yeah.
that I hated it. It's just that I had started doing too much. And too
Mhm.
much for one person may not necessarily be the same for this next person.
Right.
Someone can do it's like 5, 6 podcasts a day, and they're like, all right, another that was good. I can't. I can do 3, sometimes 4. I've done 4.
Wow. Still a
Um,
lot.
it
Yeah.
depends on the type of content too. Like doing 4 intense podcasts that are very much you have to be analytical can be a lot on the mind versus okay, 4 more vibes. But even then, there
Yeah.
is such a thing as running out of good vibes. You can run out of
Mm.
that banter energy can go low, battery low. You got to recharge.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it was having that epiphany, having that realization that I want to improve. I want to grow. I want to, do the best I can for all the facets, all the things I'm working on. But also, I need to know that I shouldn't push myself beyond the means I may have mentally, because then everything will get bad. And then for me, I'm an overthinker. I
Yeah.
tend to think of the worst case scenario for things, and then that's just going to make me worse off. And then it's like a bad circle at that point, and I don't want that to be the case.
Yeah, I think one of the things that just jumps out to me from everything that you're saying, um, and I say this for you, but also for myself, that like
Mhm.
you mentioned, like you read everything, like you are clearly a student of the game with everything that you're doing. And so while I absolutely relate to and understand the fear of like, oh my gosh, like what if this doesn't work out? What if this thing falls apart? What if like, yeah, the reality is whenever you or whenever, yeah, whenever you, and maybe part of this applies to me, like take a leap or go and do something that might feel risky. Like the reality is you are always going to be the person who puts in the effort, who puts in the work, which is why you're successful. Like it's not just luck. And I actually think of, I've already referenced this season, but I'm going back to my conversation with Kellen thinking about
Mhm.
luck because Chrissy Hofbeck in her book Winning Conditions wrote this like one thing that like will always stick with me about how
Okay.
luck isn't just like this magical thing that happens to you. You create your own luck by being hardworking, by connecting with people, by putting in all of the work and effort. And so, like, that's kind of one thing I would just say to you is that I feel pretty confident that the things that you want for yourself, whether it's the unwritten era or whatever it is that's next,
Mhm.
like that will come into fruition because of how much work you're putting in. Because, like, for you, the work you're putting in, maybe it feels like it's normal, it's every day, it's just what you do, but like not everyone is putting in that level of effort. And like like the extra mile, the extra
Mhm.
mile, and this is not a Matt Scott original, but the extra mile is never crowded, is what I once heard someone say, right? And um, I just feel like because you're going that extra mile, like it's always going to lead to something that's really beautiful at the end of the day. I mean, it already is. And I like, yeah, but I'm so curious of your thoughts on that too.
Well, like, the whole thing about you make your own luck. Even when
Yeah.
people are like, "Yeah, I was just at the right place at the right time." Well, you work towards being in the right place, the right time.
Yeah.
Let's attribute that to luck, but you work to put yourself in there. I quickly
Mhm.
want to talk about because you mentioned student of the game. I think the
Yeah.
key word is student. You're always learning. You just always
Yeah.
are. But even if I take a misstep somewhere or if I'm wrong, I'm willing to accept that I'm wrong. I'm not going to dig my heels and say, no, I know what's right. I never truly know what's right. Even with like
Mhm.
talking the traders that I feel the most confident about, in the event that I'm wrong about something, I will own up to it. If I believe I'm
Yeah.
right, I might do that, but I'm always willing to have the conversation. And I think to go back quickly to social media stuff,
Yeah.
um, I think that you know you brought up the Big Brother fan because, like I said, I read everything,
Mhm.
and one of the things that has made me switch off a little more during Big Brother season in the last 2 years, because
Yeah.
before I was tapped in, I'm putting all my thoughts out
Mhm.
there. Oh, feeds are going down. Let me break down. I really like this move from this person. Blah 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 blah. What had started happening was that
Mhm.
the tweets were being not only taken as absolutes, which it's always speculative, it's always like opinion
Right.
based with these shows, but also the replies were just truly on another level of just to me. And I didn't even ask you if we could curse on here. I just have been.
Sure.
I've
No,
been
of
mind
course you
fucked,
can.
Matt. I've been
Yeah.
mind fucked with some of the reply. So, like, I'll give you a vague example. I think it was 2 seasons ago. I tweeted something along the lines of, "I really like this move that this person is doing. I think it's good for
Mhm.
their game. Will it work out? Who knows? We'll see." That's all the tweet will say. The responses I'm getting are, "Wow, so you don't like this other person that you didn't even mention. Well, fuck you. You're an idiot." Da, 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 da,
Yeah.
da. And I was like, I never said that. I never
Yeah.
said anything against the other person. I only talked about this specific person. And stuff like that really made me pull back from
Yeah.
tweeting, not because I don't enjoy putting my thoughts on my 2 cents. I love doing a 2 cent. I love,
Mhm.
because sometimes I'll get my best like thoughts while writing down what is going on.
Totally.
I notoriously do not take notes for my live feed updates. I don't have a Word doc
Mhm.
with my notes. My notes end up being all here because I'm tweeting what I'm seeing
Wow.
happen and
Yeah.
my thoughts the night before, and I'll remember it just by writing it down. So
Mhm.
I stopped doing it because I read everything. And it got to a point where I was like, I really want to respond to this, but I feel like it's gonna be a conversation that goes nowhere. And I don't know how to cope with that
Yeah.
being the reality. So I'm not gonna do that. And I feel like that's kind of one thing that I've definitely pulled back on, and I will admit to that, is
Mhm.
the tweeting as much as I used to, especially specifically with Big Brother, because
Yeah.
it felt like, and let me tell you this, I'm someone who, I recognize the place I'm in. I will say this very openly. I've had very good feedback for the most part in my podcasting
100%.
career.
Yeah.
I understand that I'm not everyone's cup of tea. As someone who, has lived his whole life loving to be loved, hating to be hated, I did come to
Yeah.
this moment of epiphany of like, I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay. That's understandable. If I was everyone's cup of tea, that would be, nice, but it's not
Mhm.
real. It's not a
No.
reality. But that
No,
being
no
said,
one is everyone's cup of tea.
no, no,
Nobody. Nobody.
and like ultimately, which I did say is a word I do use. Ultimately,
I
for
liked it.
me, thank you. Um, if you're giving me criticism, I'm willing to hear it. If it's something I can improve on, I would love to know. Um, when I ask for reviews on my podcast, I do say 5 stars are appreciated, but at the end of the day, I want to
Yeah.
know your true thoughts, because that is the only way I can know what's working, what isn't, what you like, what you don't like. Um, but I draw the line at you accusing me of saying things about someone else when I'm talking about a whole other person.
Yeah.
Stand-em is really what it is,
Mhm.
Matt. And
Yeah.
listen,
Right.
I love a lot of these contestants. I resonate with them. I enjoy them. I'm rooting for them. When they're done their show, I hope they get what they're looking for at
Mhm.
the end, whether it's another show, whether they're satisfied. I hope that for them. But at the end of the day, for me, I feel like sometimes the blind stand-em was just not, it was making me feel very negatively about a show that I love, which I never expected to
Mhm.
happen.
Yeah.
But last couple of years, I've definitely had those moments where I'm like, I can't be on anymore. I need to
Yeah.
take a back seat a little bit. And it's been kind of healthy for me, and I've been very happy about
Yeah.
it. But also it's something that I figured, let me share right here, right now,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, what other opportunity am I gonna get to voice something like this but on Pod Friends?
No, yeah, and I mean, look, I'll put this out there that I think that's really healthy. There are lots of really I'll also say like Twitter especially has affected my relationship with Big Brother, even as someone who's not posting about it, because
Right.
I would be in my head about like, oh my gosh, like what I'd rather not, because of how much the dialogue and the conversation and everything
Yes.
just goes to a place where it doesn't need to be. You deserve to protect your peace. And also, I will point out there are so many people who are like insanely successful who are not constantly posting their opinion. There are so many people who are not in the conversation all the time. And I will say, like, you know what it is for me with social media, but like Twitter, especially with Big Brother, is that Big Brother season, like I'm not getting into fights with people. I'm not putting myself in that position, but I'm getting
Mhm.
into fights with people about other podcasters, like people coming for Sasha, people coming for Mari. I'm like, why? That's when you see me start to like pop off a little bit, where I'm like, what are we like? What are you doing? Because there's also so much else mixed in with it around like
Like,
racism and misogyny and a million other things, and no one's asking for that. Like, you
no,
don't
like,
deserve it, and you don't need to put up with it. You don't.
trust me when I say every podcaster that grabs the mic and talks about these shows, we
Mhm.
recognize the place of privilege we come from, where we get to talk about it. We love doing this, is why we're
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we're just like everybody else giving our 2 cents on the shows. I know
Mhm.
what we're signing up for, which is we are publicly talking about it on a
Sure.
downloadable format,
Sure.
which then can welcome your difference of opinion or your agreement on the opinion. Personal jabs need not happen. Because
Yeah.
even if someone says something that is incorrect or you don't agree with, if you let them know and they recognize it, that is a more healthy way to go about it than you attacking that person and then it just all going sideways. Um,
Mhm.
and I think that outside of that, everything has been positive for me. And I love doing this. I still, if I truly was
100%.
not liking doing, for example, we're talking about Big Brother. If I was
Yeah.
not loving my experience, I wouldn't do the Friday updates every week. I
No.
wouldn't do recaps when opportunity presents or I'm asked,
Mhm.
because again, with streaming, I've learned that if I'm having a good time and you are having a good time, that is the net positive. I, for example, when Big Brother Canada cut feeds, they said no more live feeds. I obviously prefer live feeds. It goes without saying.
Mhm.
It is a essential part of the Big Brother viewing experience. But after the first couple days of the feeling of like this sucks, I was like, okay, but if I am watching it and I am going to talk about it, I'm going to come in as positive as possible for the viewing experience, because if you are checking out a podcast about a show, that means
Yeah.
you've gone so far as to enjoy the show enough to want to listen to the podcast. Or even if
Mhm.
you're like, I'm not going to watch the show, but I'm going to watch the podcast, you're looking for a good time. This might be your escape from other stuff going on, or you're just, you're doing your errands and you want something to pass the time. You're looking for a good experience. And I want to give you
Mhm.
that experience. And I genuinely would not be here if I wasn't having somewhat of a positive experience. There's not
Yeah.
many seasons of shows that I've covered that I've had a net negative experience. Maybe I would say Big Brother 21 was up
Sure.
there.
Yeah.
But that was also in my say yes era. And that was also in my we're all in this together era of like, it sucks, but we all know it is, and we're going through it together. So let's be as positive as we can. This is something
Mhm.
also I learned from Rob, Matt, which was
Yeah.
even in the worst of times, Rob found a way to make unwatchable or like parts of
Yeah.
his experiences that were just unbearable bearable because of the energy he put into the shows, because of
Mhm.
the fun we could find out of it, the silver lining in the bad situation, which I appreciate. Now, obviously, this doesn't translate to everything, because there are some like truly deplorable stuff that have happened on our reality
Yeah.
TV screens that
Sure.
there need not be joked about. If anything, they've opened serious dialogue.
Yeah.
And it's important to tackle those moments with the seriousness that it deserves. And then otherwise, it's important to then with the other stuff to again make sure that the audience is having the most positive or the most enjoyable, not even positive experience they can have out of this product, because time is very finite. We have 24
Mhm.
hours in a day. Some people require 10 hours of
Yeah.
sleep, some 8, some me 6
Right.
hours of sleep. But
Uh-huh.
then the rest of your time, what you're doing with it is it's valuable. This is like a little bit of this is time. So for me, whether it's been streaming or podcasting, if you have given me your time, whether it's 1 hour or 1,000 hours, that means so much to me, because
Mhm.
I know how valuable your time is. And the fact that you chose to give that time to listen to or watch something I've put
100%.
together, that is the highest compliment I could be paid, especially if you
Mhm.
came out of it enjoying it. If you've put that many hours into experiencing me and you don't like me, my friend, do something else with your time, because then I would say that's a waste of your time if you don't like it. But if you do,
Right.
I can't thank you enough. That is the highest compliment I could be paid. And I am grateful to be in a position where I can provide even 5 minutes of content for you.
Look, I there's so much I could say, but I appreciate that so much. And there is so much love out there, and so much positivity. And just to comment on something you were saying, like I just another compliment to Rob, but also so many others on the network who I think have kind of followed in that
Mhm.
path, is that even when there's horrible stuff that might happen on a show, or a tough, difficult conversation that needs to be have, like, yeah, it might not be the most enjoyable conversation that's happening, but I do feel like Rob has a really good way of turning those into positive, like teachable moments, whether or not he'd like to
Yes.
think about it like that. And I think a lot of people, yourself included, follow in that path rather than just, like shitting on what's happening, or rather than like piling on or getting angry, and setting a good example for how the fandom could respond. And so I mean, yeah, there's so many examples of that, but I'm just like proud that we could be part of it. We've been here a long time having a beautiful conversation, and I feel like I'll take a lot away from this, not only from the conversation, but like watching and listening to it back, just because it's helping me get, even better perspective on
Mhm.
this podcasting thing. Because oh my gosh, like imagine 5 years from now, will I still be on
Who
RHAP in
knows?
5 years? What the hell? That's
That's the nature
2030.
of the space we're in,
Weird.
Matt, where it's like,
Yeah.
am I still going to be streaming to this level in 3 years? Am I still going to be
Yeah.
do I still have the shows I have in 3 years? The true answer is we don't know, which is
No, we
why
don't.
I like to live in the moment, make every moment in the
Yeah, I
present as good
agree.
as possible, and if it's still there, I'm still going to love it. If it's not, then at least we made the most out of the opportunity and the
Yeah.
moments we did have. And
But yeah.
I feel like having watched a lot of the Pod Friends and the Terran shows has
Mhm.
also lent me
Yeah.
a lot of the things that I'm talking about here. The thought-provoking moments have come from listening to my fellow
Mhm.
podcasters who have talked about their experiences, their feelings, being on this journey, and what that meant to them, and how, it's made them better or brought them to where they are. And it's been a lovely journey so far. I legitimately
Yeah.
cannot complain.
No, I think it's beautiful too, and even just recently having listened back to you on the Terran show, like I don't think I realized how long ago that was, and how much of a difference it was. But really, in that podcast, like you do a good job giving your path in depth, all the way up to like RHAP, and of course that first couple of years podcasting. And I feel like this is a great conversation that like adds on to that. And one of the things, Pooya, that really got me excited to have you on here is that at a bunch of the different live shows, when people talk to me about Pod Friends, they'll say, you should have Pooya on, like have Pooya on. And I'm like, Pooya will be on eventually. Like we will
Well,
make it happen. And
not
it's
only was
happening.
I not gonna be on, but I was getting people to agree to be on with you. I don't know who it was, but I might have it on my phone
Oh my
still.
gosh.
I like made someone sign my phone saying they'd be on Pod Friends, and then I came over to you and I said, "This person agreed to be on," and they're like, "I never did that." I was like, "Yeah, you did have the
It was
screenshot."
not Chappelle. Maybe it was Scally. Like,
Is
I
it
don't know.
Scally? I don't know. I
But
was trying to
I
spam.
remember talking about it with Scally and Chappelle, and that might have been in DC. That was a very
It was DC. It
that was a
100%
really
was
I
DC.
vividly remember that. And also I was very drunk that at that live show, more
Same,
than
which is
at
why I was
many
doing
others.
that,
And I
behaving this
appreciate it.
way.
Booking guests for me, being my Pod Friends producer.
Hey,
But I have wait, what did you find
I
it?
want to
Did you find
know.
it?
Listen, like I said, I
Oh,
enjoy
okay, you're
stuff like
still
this.
looking.
So I was like, let's peel
November
back the
2023,
layers here and
maybe.
learn more about our friends.
Look, no, and I think it's awesome. Well, we'll get everyone. I'm gonna gotta catch them all, just like Pokemon. But no,
Oh,
it's cool.
Pokemon to you? Wow, Matt. Okay. Which
You're a
Pokemon am I?
Pokemon. Um, the one with
Oh
the
no. All
Twitch
right, we'll
stream
move on.
and the
Move on. The
I was
hesitation, I was
like,
like, this Pokemon's not for Matt. Let's move on. It's fine.
no, yeah, no. I'll sit with that though. Maybe I'll like look at a bunch of pictures of Pokemon and then I'll see one where I'm like, okay, that one kind of looks like Pooya. So you know what? And in honor too, by the way, if there's a Pokemon that's made after
Yeah,
you. But
we'll take
speaking
those.
of Pokemon and things made after you, it actually has nothing to do with Pokemon at all. But I have to ask you, Pooya, in the interest of time, I ask everybody this question, of course, but it's the question of if your life were a book or documentary, what would the title be and why? I'm very curious what you would, yeah, what your title would be and why.
So thankfully, I know this question's coming, so
Right.
I've had time to think about it. And
Mm-hmm.
the title would be Securing Insecurity, where I
Ooh.
feel like for a lot of my life, I have dealt with insecurity. I still deal with insecurity. But when I'm able to find security in that, when I'm able to
Mm-hmm.
feel the confidence of what I'm doing or the work I'm putting in or what I'm building towards, that's been when I've produced my best self.
Yeah.
I think I'm happy and proud to be insecure
Mm-hmm.
because it allows me to, again, like I said earlier, look into
Yeah.
myself, look inwards and learn more about myself. Why am I feeling this way? I would I like that I feel like I can improve. I like that I have this feeling of I'm not perfect because
Mm-hmm.
I is opened my eyes to so many things about myself. It's allowed me to see the flaws in myself and to work towards those flaws. Even though there are unfounded flaws that I see in myself, I'm able to look past them and ignore them after a little bit. But
Mm-hmm.
having the ability to be insecure and to allow myself to feel insecure has really allowed me to be where I am, and I'm
Yeah.
happy about that.
Wow. I love that. And I think it's yeah, there's so much that we've talked about that I relate to, but I think that that's kind of one of the gifts. I don't think about it all that often, but something I've appreciated is like that that insecurity can lead you to like put in that extra effort that
Oh
actually does
yeah,
mean something and then and like take that extra step that means something. I mean, again, there's the flip side that, you know, insecurity could often hurt and be damaging sometimes, but also it's like,
oh
what
yeah.
do you do with it? And I love the idea of securing insecurity because it's like, okay, what do you do with it? How do you manage it? How do you navigate it? How do you process it? And I love that for you. That's beautiful.
Thank you. Every era I presented to you today
Mm-hmm.
has started with security, has had a lot of insecurity, and then been built right back up. Every single moment of my journey on this content creator, podcaster, streamer, every single moment has had insecurity. The insecurity of not being good enough to stream is what caused me to lock in and do all that research before I started to make a schedule and stick to it.
Mm-hmm.
228 or so weeks have gone by from when I started Among Us or the Goose Goose
Wow.
Among Us
Yeah.
era.
Right. Right.
In
Right.
those 228 weeks, I've done 201, meaning I've only missed 27 Sundays. Um, and in moments of not feeling like I'm good enough, I've been able to find ways to prove to myself that not only am I good enough, but then to also put my best foot forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's kept me level-headed where it doesn't matter, Matt, where I get to. It doesn't matter what I could be given all the green lights in the world to do all the shows. I will
Mm-hmm.
never forget where I was when I got the email that said I was on So You Think. I'm never gonna forget where I was when I was asked to be on to host the Masked Singer. I will never forget being asked to do the draft. I will never forget being given the keys to the Traitors, and all of that. I will remember because I have had to deal with a lot of insecurity and a lot of uncertainty about myself, and a lot of not confident, low self esteem moments,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm proud of that because remembering those things means I get to relive the great parts and remind myself the great parts. I am my own biggest fan and I can be
Yeah.
my own biggest critic. And I think
Yeah.
being the biggest on both is good for me because again, it allows me to see myself from both ends and fix myself where I need to be fixed and tell myself off for thinking negatively in places that I don't need to be fixed. And it's a journey I'm always going to have. It's part of my growth, and I am thankful. Also, if I sounded
Yeah.
conceited at any point,
No.
listeners,
Well,
wait, if
yeah,
I did,
please.
I didn't notice it at the time, but also as I'm talking, I'm like, who is this fucking fancy guy who thinks he's. I genuinely do not think I'm anything. I don't. But this has come with years of me just thinking. Like a lot of this is just me thinking in my head and
Yeah.
talking myself out of my insecurities or bigging myself up when I'm feeling my best. And
Yeah.
you're kind of hearing a little bit of insight into this head today.
Yeah. No, I will also say I feel like those moments of being insanely confident in yourself or being a little bit, I wouldn't use the word conceited, but being really confident in yourself are important, especially for those of us who are the complete opposite a lot of the time. So, yeah, like go off, like embrace it. That's what you deserve. And you know what, Puya, I'm going to give you one of those because I
Yeah.
figured out how to do a bell sound effect on the podcast. But speaking of podcasts and other things, could you just wrap us up? Could you wrap us up, Puya? Like, what words do you have for the listeners, for the equals two or less than two crew? I can't even say it. Any words that you have for the people as you wrap us up? The floor is yours to give the
Thank
folks
you.
that.
Well, as we near or have surpassed the 2 hour mark, because you never know what happens in post, but about 2 hours of your time, if
Yeah.
you've made it this far into the podcast, thank you for giving us 2 hours of your time. And I hope this
100%.
was a fun conversation. I hope there was some insight you learned into the inner mechanisms of me. Shout out to Matt for always, Matt is one of the hardest working podcasters. And I'm going to pause real quick on my wrap up to give you your kudos because I've told this to people on my stream. You and Mari, and now you with the pod friends, now that I'm seeing this, y'all are, in my opinion, the hardest working people when it comes to organizing a podcast. You send
Wow.
with Wrestling Wrap Up, y'all send us all the links ahead of time, all the footage you want us to talk about. You give us the rough outline of everything that's going to go down. With Pod Friends, you sent me a list of questions to just think, percolate on, and
Yeah.
you even said these are not all the things we're going to talk about. It was rough outline, but it was still some good
Mhm.
thought provoking stuff for me to ponder leading up to this moment. And I think that there's something to be said about the clear passion I see in when you do something like that. So thank you for that, Matt, of course.
I appreciate it.
Of course. And
Oh,
now back to the wrap up.
please.
I hope you enjoyed the again, like I said, the insights you got to my inner thoughts. Remember, anytime you see me, whether it's on a podcast, a stream, you see a tweet or a skeet or a post of mine anywhere. Remember, some of them I'm doing this, I'm very confident. Some of them I'm
Mhm.
kind of like this, and that's just human nature. I don't believe that I know everything, and I don't believe that I've ever stopped learning. And most importantly, at the end of the day, I'm just hoping I can be the best me and put the best me forward and give you the best content you deserve. Whether sometimes that's going to require feedback, it's always welcome. Sometimes it's going to not require feedback and it's good the way it is. That's also great. And to anybody who's aspiring to do any of this, whether you're looking to be, start your own podcast with friends, you want to get into the streaming thing, I've given plenty of advice in my on my Twitch, or if you message me. I love talking about this stuff as someone who has never felt confident in having knowledge. The streaming thing is something I feel very knowledgeable in. Tech side as well. I know a lot of stuff there. So feel free to at any point reach out to me if you're looking to, start your own thing and you need some tips on whether what tech you need or logistics. I'm your guy. I got you. I will never gatekeep learning about this space because I think it's a new space that's been already, man, even when we talked about it from 4 years ago to now, it's grown
Mhm.
so much, and will only continue to grow. And so if ever anyone wants to try their own and dip their toes into it. If I can help even a teensy bit, I would love to. I would love to be a part of your beginnings.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning into this episode of Pod Friends. Thank you, Pooya, for being part of it and for bringing me on a really great journey that still has me thinking just a lot about the conversation, a lot about my own eras, about where I am, and hopefully it inspires the listeners. I'm sure it will inspire the listeners to think about their progress, their progression, where they are, and even where they're going. So thank you so much, Pooya, and thank you to the team behind the scenes at RHAP. I'm sure I'll leave some folks out, but just shout out to Sam Moore, Scott St. Pierre, Jess Sterling, Derek Stasinski, Rob Sesternino. I could go on and on, but just big shout outs to all of you. Follow me on social media, Matt Scott GW on all platforms. Check out Patreon, patreon.com/RHAP, support what we're doing. And leave a voicemail, speakpipe.com/podfriends. But thank you so much, everyone. I'm so thrilled for this conversation. I'm excited to tell you that next week's episode is with the one, the only, Carolyn Weegar.
Girl.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to hear from Carolyn and hope you are too. And thanks for making it to this point in the podcast. Let me know that you did. Hit me up on all platforms to let me know that you tuned in. And once again, thank you for being a pod friend.